So the Lord gave to Israel all the land he had sworn to give their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. Not a single one of all the good promises the Lord had given to the family of Israel was left unfulfilled. Everything he had spoken came true. I was out in Davidson, North Carolina one day. I love to go to Summit Coffee. It's one of my favorite coffee shops around this area. I was doing some studying there, and after that was walking downtown Davidson. There's a Presbyterian church right on the corner that has a sign out front that said, "Always open, come in and pray." So I decided to do just that. Walked in and began to spend some time with the Lord, and as I did, it was in those moments that God began to speak to me, I believe, very clearly about planting a church in Davidson. As I began to think more and process this later, I wanted to make sure that we were doing this in God's timing and in His flow. The first big question was who? Who was the man of God and the woman of God that God was already stirring their hearts to come to Davidson?
Have you ever found yourself in a season of transition? You knew God was calling you somewhere else to do something else, but you didn't know where and you didn't know what. That was the season that Jenna and myself were in until earlier this year. Pastor Doug and I were able to sit down, and he began to talk about Davidson, North Carolina. And as he painted this picture of the community and the college, he began to talk about how CFA could play a role in positively changing the climate and the culture of Davidson. So Jenna and I decided to go out and have dinner with Pastor Doug in Camden at Brick House Tavern. And we began to talk and joke and dream about what could be. And as we grabbed our coffee, we walked around downtown and we made our way to the chapel that Pastor Doug talks about. And in that chapel, he began to pray. And as he prayed, we realized that our hearts were opening to Davidson. This place was becoming our home, and these people were becoming our family.
Churches usually start in one of two areas, either a school or a theater. Well, guess who just happens to own the local theater in Davidson? Curtis and Mary Fain, who are amazing CFA church people. We went out to that theater, Zach and Steve Hargett and I. We toured the facility with Curtis and we began to dream and talk and brainstorm. After that, we sat down at lunch and it got to the part where we were talking figures, numbers. Curtis said, "Pastor Doug, how does this sound?" And he put a number in front of me that was for not just one, not just two of those theaters, but the entire facility for all of Sunday morning. And wouldn't you know it, it was the exact number that I had written down in our budget just that morning. And we continued to see how God was lining these things up. The next step in this process was getting the funding for this launch. So we took this project to our first round of Kingdom Builders several weeks ago. I had Zach and Jenna there. We brought them up on stage. We cast the vision for what we really felt like God was saying and what He wanted us to do. And then I said simply, "Guys, no pressure, but I want to hire Zach and Jenna. Oh, and by the way, I want to do it in the next 10 minutes, but it's dependent upon your giving." We took up pledges, we counted them quickly, and in that moment, we were able to hire Zach and Jenna Witt on the spot and almost fund the ministry budget for the first year for Davidson. God continued to be at work, and we were finding His favor and His flow. Our campus in Davidson will be 100% the very core of the DNA of who God has called CFA to be. So it will be CFA worship. It will be 365 student ministries. It will be Kids World Kids Ministries, VIP First Impressions. The sermon will be live stream video from our broadcast location right here in Concord. Davidson, as you read about its history of the college, actually has a history of the fires of revival. I believe that God is speaking, and what He's saying is He is going to reignite the fires of revival both at Davidson College and in the city. I believe this will be an awakening of the Word and the Spirit. I see missionaries being sent out from Davidson to impact local areas and global areas. I see God using CFA to continue to love Jesus and change the world.